Imagine dedicating your life, your home, your love to your family, only to find yourself cast aside, treated like, well, an inconvenience in your own home. That's where our deep dive begins today. We're plunging into a really powerful story about family betrayal, resilience, and a quest for justice that, honestly, it forces us to look really closely at human nature and morality itself.
Yeah, it's quite something. Our source material is this raw, very emotional account of Eleanor Vance. She's an elderly woman, and her trust in her own son was just completely shattered. So we'll be digging into the most important parts, the key insights from her story. We'll explore the shocking lengths some people will go to, but also the surprising strength that can pop up when everything seems lost.
Right. And the big questions for you listening are, what can we really learn about human nature here? Both its darkest corners, the greed and cruelty, but also its most surprising reservoirs of kindness. And maybe even tougher. What does justice actually look like when it's your own flesh and blood on the other side? That's kind of our mission today. So let's really get into it. Let's start with Eleanor Vance, or Ellie. She spent nearly, 40 years building a life in this lovely two-story brick house, big garden, the whole thing, with her husband, Bob. But then her life just turns into this nightmare after she signs over the deed of that house to her son, David. It's just a gut-wrenching decision to even think about, isn't it?
It really is. And the betrayal that followed, it wasn't subtle. It was chillingly literal. Ellie was basically banished to a basement room. The description is stark. The size of 4 steps. Can you even picture that? It's tiny.
4 steps?
Yeah. Yeah. Cold, damp, furnished with a sagging old folding bed, a shaky table, and get this, a portable toilet behind a flimsy bit of plywood. And the heater David gave her, it was described as no more useful than a candle in a freezer. Outside, it was minus 15 degrees Celsius.
Unbelievable. Minus 15.
And the neglect went further. Cold oatmeal for food, a window so dirty it barely let light in. She had this cough for 3 weeks, and David just waved it off, saying, "Oh, it'll clear up by itself, Mom, you're strong." It wasn't just physical discomfort. It was like they were trying to strip away her personhood.
The physical conditions sound absolutely horrific, yeah.
Yeah.
But the psychological part, that might be even worse. Sarah, David's wife, she starts taking Ellie's cherished belongings, things she and Bob saved for, picked out together, and sells them, just calls them clutter. How did that specific act, amplify the betrayal? It goes beyond just being cold or hungry, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's an incredibly targeted kind of cruelty, isn't it? It's not just about comfort. It's about erasing her history, her identity. These weren't just things. They were memories made tangible. They represented her life, her marriage with Bob. You could argue it's almost more devastating than the physical neglect because it's aimed at her very existence, her connection to her past. It reduces her to an unwanted object, too pitiful to throw away, but embarrassing to keep in sight. I mean, what does that tell you about Sarah's mindset beyond just making a quick buck?
It tells you a lot about, how easily people can justify horrible things, I suppose. And what's fascinating, or maybe chilling, is how this whole betrayal was set up. 3 months before all this, David and Sarah have this, innocent family dinner. But they totally played on Ellie's emotions. They talked about their money problems, rising rent, heating costs, needing space for their kids, Liam and Chloe. They used guilt, this whole facade of caring, to get Ellie to sign the deed. Suggested it would give her peace of mind, tax benefits, all that. Ellie even admits she had this vague premonition of trouble, but, her motherly love for David just pushed it aside.
It's a textbook case, really, not just of greed, but how quickly the mind can rationalize cruelty once self-interest kicks in. David's change wasn't just about money. It was this insidious process of dehumanizing his own mother, turning her into an obstacle, basically, which let him ignore her suffering. It's that slippery slope, isn't it, where compassion just gets eroded by perceived opportunity?
And the second she signed that paper, everything changed. David's gaze, which had been kind of avoiding hers, apparently turned to almost disgust. He started treating her not like his mother, but like a burden, an unpleasant duty. That detail is so chilling. It tells you so much about how opportunity or perceived opportunity can just completely warp a relationship. The family bond here wasn't just strained, it was corrupted. Utterly.
It really highlights a dark truth, doesn't it? That some individuals are capable of, astonishing cruelty when their self-interest is on the line, especially when they see someone vulnerable as just a means to an end. It's a stark reminder that even within families, these supposedly sacred ties, the potential for betrayal can just lie dormant, waiting for that moment of perceived gain.
This profound betrayal leaves Ellie just feeling completely lost, understandably. But then something truly remarkable happens. A turning point comes from the past.
Indeed. It's almost like something from a movie. Ellie finds an envelope under her pillow, left there by her late husband, Bob, and it's labeled, chillingly, open when all is lost. That suggests he knew something, doesn't it? A premonition, perhaps? Like he understood the potential in his own son.
It feels like more than just a premonition. It feels like a testament to a deep, maybe even painful understanding of human nature. So she opens it, and the contents are just astounding. The letter warns Ellie about their son's betrayal. Bob writes, "I knew our son better than you think."
Oh.
And then it reveals this secret second house already registered in Ellie's name. Bob had bought it during his business trips, specifically anticipating something like this. And not just the house, a safe deposit box at the First National Bank on Main Street with a substantial amount of money in it. He'd planned everything meticulously. Not just a safety net, but a real path to freedom.
The immediate challenge for Ellie, though, was finding the key to that box. Babe had hidden it in their secret place behind the painting, Morning in a Pine Forest. And this painting, of course, was the very one Sarah had dismissed as old-fashioned tastelessness. Typical Sarah. She tossed it into storage or the attic. So the search for this key becomes Ellie's first real act of defiance. A tiny spark of hope in that awful basement.
And what a pivotal moment that search turns out to be. While Ellie's up in the dusty attic looking for this painting, her 15-year-old granddaughter, Chloe, finds her. And Chloe, showing this remarkable empathy, just straight up asks, "They treat you badly, don't they?" Then in this moment of just incredible courage and honesty, Chloe reveals her parents' real plan. They're planning to sell the house after they get rid of you to buy an apartment downtown and a new car. That reveal isn't just crucial information for Ellie. It's huge validation. It fuels her resolve. It's like the voice of truth cutting right through all the deceit.
What's truly fascinating here, I think, is Bob's profound love and foresight. His actions, even after he's gone, they're a testament to this enduring devotion to Ellie and also maybe a painful understanding of people, even his own son. His wisdom posthumously becomes Ellie's guiding force. It leads her out of despair towards reclaiming her life. It really speaks volumes about how true love can, well, transcend even death. And maybe foresight isn't always about preventing bad things, but sometimes about preparing for them.
Absolutely. In discovering Bob's plan, it just transforms Ellie. The source material says she goes from being this helpless old woman to a woman with a plan and the means to carry it out. You can almost picture her straightening her shoulders, the weightlifting replaced by this steely confidence. It's a remarkable shift from victim to strategist, really.
Yeah, and her departure from David's house is so powerful because it's quiet. She just leaves. She confronts Sarah, who's insisting she go to a nursing home, and Ellie's calm reply, "I have something you don't know about, something David doesn't know." That's a moment of pure strength. Sarah's face apparently twists with disbelief. You get this hint of the power dynamic shifting right there as Ellie just walks out. It's a quiet reclaiming of her agency, a refusal to be dismissed.
So from there, she goes straight to the bank, accesses Bob's safe deposit box, finds the money, finds the address to her new home, 47 Garden Street in Sunny Valley. It's described as a small, well-kept one-story house on a 15-acre plot, and it's completely ready for her utilities paid, everything. Bob even arranged for a caring neighbor, Michael Henderson, to keep an eye on it. He really did think of everything, not just shelter, but a community, a fresh start. It's a whole new beginning, laid out piece by piece.
Right. And with these new resources, Ellie contacts Thomas Wallace, who was an acquaintance of Bob's and also a lawyer. He confirms what she suspected. The deed David tricked her into signing, it can be disputed. Why? Because David and Sarah clearly violated the condition to provide decent living conditions, I'd say. And the evidence is there. Photos of the basement, Ellie's testimony, and crucially, witness testimony from Brenda Jenkins, a neighbor who had been secretly bringing Ellie food, which shows, justice often relies not just on the legal system, but on the courage of ordinary people willing to speak up.
Which brings us to the climax. 1 week later, Ellie returns to her old house. But this time, she's not alone. She's got her lawyer, a housing expert, even a precinct inspector with her. David and Sarah, predictably, they try to lie their way out of it, claim Ellie lived upstairs, the basement was just a storage room, a blatant attempt to rewrite reality, right? To cling to their story. And this really brings up that question again. Is Ellie's action here just revenge? Or is it this fierce need for self-preservation, for justice? And does it even matter when it's your own family?
It's a crucial distinction, definitely worth thinking about. While sure, there's probably a natural satisfaction in turning the tables, Ellie's journey seems to go beyond simple retribution. It becomes about restoring her self-worth, her autonomy, reclaiming what was unjustly taken. It's not really about inflicting pain for pain's sake. She apparently did want them to feel even a bit of the fear and uncertainty I lived with, but that sounds less like wanting them to suffer and more about ensuring they understand the consequences, ensuring accountability. True justice here feels like it's about reestablishing balance and dignity, which is fundamentally different from just seeking an eye for an eye, wouldn't you say?
I think so. And this is where Chloe's courage just seals it. Despite David frantically trying to shut her up, she stands tall. She declares, "No, Mom, I won't be silent anymore. What you did is terrible, and I'll tell everyone the truth." She bravely spills everything. How they sent Grandma into the basement, how you brought her bad food, how you threw away her things. Her honesty, facing down her own parents, that's a powerful act of moral integrity. It's like this beacon of hope, showing that compassion and truth can still exist even in really fractured families. The legal pressure works. David and Sarah are forced to face it, and David eventually agrees to a settlement. The house goes back to Ellie.
And that victory, while huge, it's described as bittersweet. Ellie gets her house back, yes, but the memories are forever tainted by the betrayal. She feels Bob's presence, like he's approving of her actions, which must be validating. But still, you can't just erase what happened. That illusion of family unity is gone forever.
Yeah, and Ellie's next move really shows her focus on healing, I think. She decides to sell the city house. She recognizes it holds memories, sure, but now it also carries this unbearable weight of betrayal. Her plan: buy a smaller place near Sunny Valley, maybe an apartment, and spend summers in the Sunny Valley house, working in her garden. It really highlights her shift towards peace, towards self-care. She's choosing healing over clinging to a painful past. It's not about punishment anymore. It's about rebuilding her own life, completely on her own terms.
In that connection with Chloe, it endures. That offers such a powerful message of hope, doesn't it? An intergenerational understanding. Chloe keeps in touch with Ellie, even against her parents' wishes. She says, "I told the truth and I won't apologize." She visits Ellie in Sunny Valley. It shows that not all family bonds were broken by the greed, that integrity can actually bridge these terrible divides. It proves that even in the darkest situations, you can find these unexpected sources of light and moral clarity.
So wrapping this up, what does this story mean for you listening? Well, it definitely reveals the darker side of human nature, the greed, the selfishness, how scarily easy it is for some people to rationalize cruelty for personal gain. It's a stark reminder of how money, or just the idea of gain, can warp even the closest relationships, leading people to dehumanize others. But thankfully, it also shows the incredible resilience of the human spirit, the enduring power of love, like Bob's incredible foresight and planning, and the surprising courage of integrity, like Chloe, standing up for what's right. It shows that even when faced with profound betrayal, you can reclaim your life and dignity, and maybe find peace not through revenge, but through that determined pursuit of justice and self-preservation.
And it really raises an important question, doesn't it? When is standing up for yourself, even against your own family, not just about self-preservation, but actually a necessary moral imperative? What boundaries do we need to set to protect our own dignity? And what does it say about us when we refuse to let others define our worth or even our home?
We've really only scratched the surface here, sort of dissected the skeleton of the story. Want to know what really happened next? All the details? Then you should listen to the full story.
Yeah, and consider this as you do. In conflicts this personal, does winning actually bring peace? Or is the real victory the journey itself, the act of reclaiming your life? What does Ellie's story teach you about forgiveness, about boundaries, and maybe about the unexpected ways we can all find our own new beginnings?
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking out those aha moments.
Eleanor Ellie Vance never imagined that after signing over the deed of the house to her son, her life would turn into a nightmare, and she would have to live in a cold basement. One day, Ellie found an envelope from her husband, Robert Bob Vance, labeled, "Open when all is lost." She opened it and discovered documents for a second house registered in her name, which Bob had kept secret in case of betrayal by their son. Cold pierced Ellie to the bone in the basement. The old heater, which her son David had brought a week ago, hummed loudly, but was no more useful than a candle in a freezer. She wrapped herself in 3 blankets, but the damp chill still seeped in, making her old bones ache. The basement window near the ceiling hadn't been cleaned in ages, and the dim February light barely filtered through the dirty glass. Outside it was minus 15 degrees. The room was the size of 4 steps. This was what her life had become: a folding bed with a sagging mesh, a shaky table, a portable toilet behind a plywood partition emitting a characteristic smell, and an old dresser with the few belongings they generously allowed her to keep. Everything else Sarah, David's wife, had decided to sell so as not to clutter the house. On the table was a plate of cold oatmeal, which her daughter-in-law had brought in the morning. She hadn't felt like eating for a long time. Ellie held a photograph of her husband, Bob, and asked, "How did this happen, Bob?" Bob looked at her from the worn photo with young eyes. The picture was taken in the 80s, when they had just bought the house where Ellie had lived for almost 40 years, the house that no longer belonged to her. She remembered the day the photo was taken. Spring. They were standing by the gate of their new 2-story brick house with a large plot. Bob was then the chief engineer at a factory and had received a bonus, while Ellie had just started working as a head nurse. They felt that the whole world was at their feet. Bob said, hugging Ellie at the shoulders, "Here our children will grow up, then grandchildren will come on weekends, and we will spend time in the garden, picking apples." He never saw how his dreams turned into a nightmare. A heart attack took him 3 years ago. Sudden, frightening, and unfair. Extensive, doctors said, didn't suffer. Neighbors comforted. 38 years together, then suddenly emptiness. Laughter and TV sounds came from upstairs. Life was normal there in her house, at her table among her things. While Ellie sat in the basement like an unwanted object that was too pitiful to throw away, but embarrassing to keep in sight, like an old buffet that Sarah had immediately sent to the dump. "We bought that junk with Bob to celebrate our 10th wedding anniversary, saved up, chose it, rejoiced," Ellie thought. Now her whole life had turned into clutter that only hinders and takes up space. Ellie suddenly had a coughing fit so severe that tears welled up in her eyes. She covered her mouth with the corner of a blanket, trying to hold back the attack so they upstairs wouldn't hear. Last time Sarah had come down with a cough syrup and irritably said, "Can't you be quieter at night? The kids don't get enough sleep. They have to get up early for school." The cold had lasted 3 weeks, but nobody intended to take her to a doctor. "It'll clear up by itself, Mom. You're strong," David said, not looking Ellie in the eyes. In his gaze was something new, not just avoidance, but almost disgust, as if Ellie was no longer his mother, but a burden, an unpleasant duty. Ellie took from under her pillow the envelope she had found yesterday while sorting through old belongings in a cardboard box. David had brought that very box a week ago, saying, "Mom, look, maybe there's something useful. The rest we put up in the attic. There's plenty of space there." Plenty of space in the attic, but not in the house where Ellie had lived all her life, where every corner was steeped in memories of happy years with her husband, of raising their son, celebrating holidays, planting apple trees in the garden. Ellie noticed the envelope at the very bottom of the box under old receipts and documents that Bob always stored carefully. Thick, yellowish with Bob's firm handwriting, open when all is lost. She had never dared to open it before. It seemed that as long as the envelope was sealed, not everything was lost yet. The hope was still alive that David would come to his senses, that these hardships were temporary, that things would soon improve. Ellie clung to this hope like a drowning person, to a straw. But this morning something changed. Sarah got up at 8, irritated and sullen. Silently, she put a plate of oatmeal in front of Ellie. Ellie tried to start a conversation with her. "Sarah, maybe I could have lunch with the grandchildren today? I can bake a pie. Liam loves my apple pie." "No way," she snapped. "The kids have a schedule, and anyway, Liam has a tutor. Chloe has art club." She turned, knocking over a cup of tea, and the hot liquid spilled onto Ellie's knees. Ellie cried out in pain. "You did that on purpose." Sarah suddenly blurted, looking at Ellie with undisguised malice. "You're setting me up to blame me later? I know such tricks." Ellie looked at her, not recognizing the woman who once called her mom and brought flowers on her birthday. Now there stood a stranger, hostile and expressing only one thing: "I wish you'd disappear sooner." At that moment, something inside Ellie broke. She realized it couldn't get worse. Everything was truly lost. With trembling fingers, Ellie tore open the thick paper of the envelope. Inside lay a folded letter and some stapled documents. "Ellie, my dear, if you are reading this letter, then what I feared has happened. Our son has betrayed you," Bob wrote. Hot tears rolled down Ellie's cheeks. How could he know? How could Bob foresee what Ellie hadn't even dared to imagine? Could he see in their boy what Ellie, blinded by motherly love, refused to notice? She dabbed her eyes with a corner of a handkerchief and continued reading, but her thoughts kept returning to how it all began, to that family dinner 3 months ago, when David started talking about the deed. That October evening, Ellie was preparing for the arrival of her children with special anticipation. They rarely came just like that, usually only for a short visit after a call. But this time David called himself, "Mom, can we come over for dinner? We miss you." Overjoyed, Ellie couldn't sit still all day. She baked an apple pie and made borscht rolled cabbage rolls. David loved these since childhood. She set the table with a beautiful linen tablecloth reserved for special occasions, took out the formal china, the one they bought for their silver wedding anniversary. She polished every shining glass to a squeak, every plate to a mirror shine. When the doorbell rang, Ellie ran to open it like a girl. The whole family arrived, David, Sarah, and their teenage grandchildren, Liam and Chloe. The house filled with voices, laughter, life that she had missed so much in recent years. "Mom, why did you go to such trouble?" David said then, kissing Ellie on the cheek. "Every visit from you is a holiday to me," she replied, hugging her son. He exchanged a strange glance with Sarah, but Ellie didn't pay attention. She was too happy they were here. "Grandma, does the internet work here?" Liam asked without looking up from his phone. "Of course, sweetheart, Bob even arranged the fastest plan before he died. I kept it the same for you. Thought it would be more convenient when you come." Chloe, her 15-year-old granddaughter, approached and hugged Ellie. She smelled of some sweet perfume. Ellie buried her nose in the girl's hair, inhaling that scent of youth. "How is school, Chloe?" she asked. "It's okay," she shrugged. "Grandma, can I sit in your room? The bed is so comfortable and the view from the window is nice." "Of course, dear," Ellie smiled, "but sit at the table first. Everything is getting cold." They settled in the living room where Ellie laid a big table. They barely talked, mostly David and Sarah spoke, and Ellie listened, eagerly soaking in every detail of their lives she knew so little about lately. "The rent went up again," Sarah sighed when they moved to tea and pie. "The heating charges are just robbery. $8,000 for a 2-room apartment. Is that normal at all?" "I agree, it's a nightmare." Ellie shook her head. "I've got bills too. Luckily, my pension is decent and Bob left a savings book." Ellie listened half-heartedly, just happy they were near. But she gradually began to understand where the conversation was heading. "There are layoffs at work." David joined, pushing aside a plate with leftover pie. "The manager gathered the department yesterday and hinted they might optimize us, and I still have 3 years left, paying off the car loan. They won't give us a mortgage, and the kids are growing. They need their own rooms," Sarah added. "In the rented place, it's cramped, the walls are thin. Liam does his homework and Chloe plays her music. They're constantly fighting. Liam is applying to college next year, tutors are needed, and you know how much that costs now." Ellie looked at their faces and saw something hidden behind the words. They seemed to be putting on an act, but Ellie didn't take it seriously at the time. She thought they were just sharing their grievances, maybe even seeking advice or help. "I would help, of course, as much as I can," she thought. "You know, Mom." David put down his fork and looked Ellie straight in the eyes. "Sarah and I have been thinking, you're alone in such a big house. It's probably hard for you to manage it and lonely." "I'm managing, son," Ellie replied then. "I've gotten used to it. Brenda Jenkins, the neighbor, visits often. I watch TV, chat on the garden forum. Bob bought a good computer before he died. So we thought," he continued, as if not hearing Ellie, "maybe we could move in with you. It would be more cheerful for you and safer for us. You need care at your age, 65. It's no joke. You're alone in case something happens. And the money we'd save," Sarah added, pouring herself tea. "Instead of 2 utility bills, we'd pay 1 and not throw away crazy money for rented apartments. We'd have enough for repairs and tutors for the kids." Ellie was confused. On one hand, the thought of the house filling with life again seemed appealing. On the other, she had gotten used to her loneliness, to the freedom to watch her favorite shows whenever she wanted, to cook what she wished and not what was required. "I don't know, kids. I'll have to think about it. The house is big. There's enough space for everyone," David added. "You will have the first floor. We'll be on the second. The kitchen is shared, but we won't bother you. Sarah works late, so do I. The kids are at school." Ellie remembered Bob saying before he died, "Ellie, you have to help the kids while we're alive, but don't forget about yourself." At the time, she didn't understand what he meant. "But Mom," David hesitated, playing with his teaspoon. "For us to settle here seriously, we'd need some guarantees. Repairs, furniture." "What guarantees, son?" "I don't know, maybe sign a deed?" he suggested casually. "Formally, the house is still our family home, but it'll give you peace of mind and us too, so everything is by law. You get tax benefits as a pensioner." Something pricked Ellie's heart then, a vague worry, a premonition of trouble, but she dismissed it because this was her son, her own flesh and blood. How could he wish her harm? Open when all is lost, These words on the envelope now burned Ellie's fingers like red-hot iron. She continued reading Bob's letter, and with every line realized that her husband had foreseen what she could not even imagine. "I know our son better than you think, Ellie," Bob wrote. "You always saw only the good in him, and I loved you for that, but in recent years I noticed how he was changing, how he looked at me, our house, our things, how he counted the money we spent on ourselves instead of giving to him. I was afraid to tell you. Didn't want to break your heart, but if you're reading these lines, it means my fears were justified." Ellie pressed the letter to her chest and closed her eyes. Her heart pounded like a frightened bird. Could Bob really know? Could he see in their boy what Ellie refused to see all those years? "I didn't want to scare you while alive, Ellie, but I prepared something just in case," the letter continued. "Remember how often I traveled on business in the last year? Actually, I was working on something. Now it's your salvation." Attached to the letter were documents: a property deed, a technical passport, some receipts. Ellie wiped her eyes, not believing what she saw. It turned out they had another house, a small one in the suburbs she knew nothing about. Bob bought it secretly from everyone and registered it in her name, but hid the documents, rightly fearing Ellie's naivete might make her tell their son. "There is something else," Bob wrote. "In the First National Bank on Main Street, safe deposit box number 245 holds money, not much but enough for a start. The key you will find in our secret place behind the painting, Morning in a Pine Forest, a landscape painting. Remember, we always hid our stash there from repairs?" Ellie remembered, of course she did, Behind the famous painting's reproduction was a small niche in the wall where they kept emergency money. But the painting, Sarah took it off the wall on the very first day after moving in, saying it was old-fashioned tastelessness. "Where did you put it?" Ellie asked then. "In storage or the attic, I don't remember." Her daughter-in-law shrugged. "So somewhere in the house is the bank box key. I must find it," thought Ellie. She hid the letter and documents in an old pillowcase she used as a pillow cover. Suddenly footsteps sounded. Someone was coming down to the basement. Ellie straightened quickly, trying to put on an indifferent expression. The door opened, and David entered the first time in a week. Usually Sarah or the children brought her food. "Hi, Mom." He shifted uneasily, not crossing the threshold. "How are you here?" "Fine," Ellie answered, trying to keep her voice steady. Now that she knew there was a way out, it was easier to control her emotions. "Listen, there's this thing." David scratched his head. "Sarah and I decided to turn the basement into a gym. The doctor told me I need to strengthen my back, and going to a fitness club is too far." Ellie was silent, waiting for more. Where were they planning to move her? To the shed? "So you'll have to move, we thought, and decided you might like to live with Aunt Jane. Remember your polyclinic friend? She lives alone in a 2-room apartment, lots of space." "Aunt Jane died a year ago," Ellie said quietly. David hesitated for a second, but quickly recovered. "Well, then another friend. You have plenty." "What if I don't want to live with a friend?" Ellie asked, looking David straight in the eyes for the first time in a long while. Something flickered in his gaze, irritation, annoyance, but he quickly put on a mask of a caring son. "Mom, don't be selfish," he sighed. "We took you in, feed you, take care of you. It's not like that. You see it, there's no room for us all. The kids need space to grow. And anyway," his voice grew harder, "this house is ours now on paper, so we have the right to decide how to use it." There it was, finally, the words that had hung in the air for so long. Their house, not Ellie's. Not the one they and Bob had built and furnished all their lives, but theirs. "Because there was a piece of paper, I need time," Ellie said, "at least a week to find somewhere to live." "Okay," David agreed reluctantly, "a week, no more. Next Friday they start bringing in exercise machines." He turned and left without saying goodbye, closing the door firmly behind him. Ellie collapsed onto the folding bed, feeling a strange lightness. Fear and despair gave way to resolve. She had a plan, or rather Bob had a plan, and all she had to do was follow it. Waiting until the house quieted down, Ellie carefully climbed the creaky stairs. Fortunately, the door leading from the basement to the first floor was not locked. David apparently thought she was too weak and scared to take any action on her own. The house was dark and quiet. The streetlight's glow through the living room window allowed Ellie to orient herself without turning on the lights. She moved silently like a shadow toward the stairs to the second floor. The steps creaked loudly underfoot, each creak pounding in her chest. Being discovered now would be a catastrophe. Reaching the attic, she tried the handle, locked. Her heart sank. Was it all in vain? Then she remembered the spare key always hung on a nail behind the doorframe. Feeling around in the dark, she found the cold metal. It was there. The lock clicked softly, and Ellie slipped into the dusty darkness of the attic. Moonlight filtering through the dormer window outlined the silhouettes of stacked things, boxes, suitcases, old furniture. Where to look for the painting, she thought. She moved slowly between the piles, careful not to knock anything over. Her eyes gradually adjusted to the darkness, and she began recognizing shapes. There was the floor lamp from their bedroom, the rocking chair where she rocked little David, the buffet that Sarah had called junk. Suddenly, Ellie saw it, their painting leaned against the far wall. Her heart beat faster. She approached, pushed the heavy frame, and felt the recess in the wall. The key was there, small, shiny, wrapped in cellophane. Their secret, known to no one but her and Bob. Ellie hid the key in her robe pocket and was about to leave when a beam of light fell on the attic stairs. Someone was coming up. She froze, not knowing where to hide. "Grandma?" came a quiet voice. It was Chloe, her granddaughter. She stood on the top step with a phone in her hand, shining a light around the attic. "Chloe," Ellie whispered, "be quiet, dear." "I heard footsteps," Chloe said, coming closer. "What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be up here." "I was looking for something important. Your grandfather left me," Ellie answered honestly. Chloe looked at her long and intently. There was something in that look. Understanding, sympathy. They treat you badly, don't they? She suddenly asked Dad and Mom, "I heard them talking about you, that you're a nuisance, that they want to get rid of you." Ellie didn't know what to say, didn't want to turn the child against her parents, no matter who they were. "It's complicated, Chloe," she finally said. "I know," Chloe repeated. She suddenly hugged Ellie. "I wanted to come downstairs to you, but Mom forbade me, said you have a contagious disease and we can't see you." So that's how they explained your disappearance, a contagious disease. How convenient. Ellie thought, "I'm healthy, dear. It's just inconvenient for your parents that I'm here." "I know," Chloe repeated, "ma'am. They think I don't understand, but I hear everything. They're planning to sell the house after they get rid of you, to buy an apartment downtown and a new car." Ellie's breath caught. "Sell the house? Our house? Come on, I'll take you downstairs," Chloe said. "If they wake up, I'll say I had a nightmare and went to get water." Smart girl and kind, just like your grandpa, Ellie thought. They carefully went down to the first floor, and Chloe saw Ellie to the basement door. "I love you, Grandma," she whispered, hugging Ellie goodbye. "No matter what. And I love you, Sunshine." Ellie kissed her on the forehead. "Go to sleep now, and thank you." Returning to her basement room, Ellie clenched the bank box key in her hand. Now she had everything she needed to carry out Bob's plan. Morning couldn't come soon enough. Ellie barely slept that night. Her mind swirled with thoughts that would not let her rest. Images of the past flooded her. Happy moments of their family life, David's birth, his first steps, school success. When had she lost track of her boy? When had that hardness grown in him? What had she done wrong? Or was it not her fault? Maybe it was Sarah's influence, circumstances, the environment, or money, the eternal chase for status and not to be less than others. At dawn, Ellie dressed and was ready to leave. Upstairs, the sounds of a waking house stirred, water running, voices, footsteps. She waited until David went to work and Sarah took the children to school, then quietly went upstairs. The house was empty. On the kitchen table were unwashed coffee cups and plates with breakfast leftovers. Nobody had thought to bring her food anymore. After yesterday's conversation with David, she was officially counted out. Ellie found her old bag in the hallway, the one Sarah hadn't thrown out, only because she sometimes used it for market trips. She packed the few valuable things she had left: photo albums, Bob's letters, their wedding photo in a silver frame, which she hid under her pillow. She put on the only decent dress she owned and a clean but old coat. Then she approached the buffet where the documents used to be stored. David had taken almost everything, but something had to remain. Like her passport, without it, she wouldn't be able to access the bank safe deposit box. At that moment, the door opened. Sarah stood on the threshold with supermarket bags. Seeing Ellie, she froze, surprise, then shifting to irritation appearing on her face. "What are you doing here?" "Why aren't you in the basement?" she asked sharply. "I'm leaving, Sarah," Ellie answered calmly, continuing to rummage through the bureau drawer. But Sarah put the bags on the floor. "Where are you going?" "It doesn't matter now. I won't bother you anymore." Sarah's face relaxed. "Finally, you realize it's better this way. David called your friend Jane. She agreed to take you in until you find a good nursing home. Don't trouble yourself." Ellie finally found her passport hidden behind a pile of old receipts. "I'll take care of myself." "You?" Sarah laughed. "Where will you go? You have nothing. The house is ours. Your pension's a pittance." "You're wrong." Ellie straightened and looked her directly in the eyes. I have something you don't know about, something David doesn't know. Sarah's face changed. She stepped forward, grabbed Ellie's hand. What do you have? Tell me. Ellie shrugged off her hand and headed to the door. You'll find out soon enough. Tell David. I'll come by in a couple of days. We need to talk about the deed you tricked me into signing. With these words, Ellie left, firmly closing the door behind her. Sarah's screams echoed after her, but Ellie didn't look back. Ahead lay freedom and a new home carefully arranged by her wise, foresighted Bob. Outside the gate, Ellie stopped for a moment, uncertain where to go. The world where she once felt secure now seemed alien and frightening. She hadn't left the house unaccompanied since moving to the basement. Sarah said it was dangerous for her alone. The February cold bit deep, the snow creaked underfoot. Ellie buttoned her coat and slowly moved toward the bus stop. Her heart pounded wildly, but she refused to look back. The bus was warm and smelled of wet clothes. Ellie sat by the window, clutching her bag, holding her meager belongings and Bob's letter, now her only guide to action. An elderly woman opposite looked at her with interest. You look pale, she finally said. Are you feeling unwell? No, I'm fine. Ellie tried to smile, just haven't been outside all winter. Ah, the woman nodded understandingly. I haven't either. Such cold lately. And now I'm going to my granddaughter's birthday. Birthday. Ellie suddenly remembered Liam's 16th birthday coming up next week. She had been secretly knitting him a sweater at night, unfinished now. Throat tightening with unwanted tears, she thought, no time for weakness. The First National Bank on Main Street had hardly changed since they and Bob opened their account many years ago. The same green walls, the same uncomfortable chairs in the waiting area, only terminals had appeared and young girls in green vests as consultants. Can I help you? One of them addressed Ellie, noticing her confusion. I need to open a safe deposit box. Ellie tried to sound confident. Sure, please go to window number 4. You'll need your passport and a contract for the box. Ellie didn't have a contract, only the key and instructions from Bob, but that turned out to be enough. The gray-haired man behind the glass carefully examined her documents, checked something in the computer, and nodded. Eleanor Vance, box 245. Yes, everything is in order. The contract is in our system, paid for 5 years in advance. Please wait. We'll take you to the vault now, the guard said, pointing to the box number 245. The key easily turned in the lock. Inside was a thick envelope and a small box. Ellie opened the envelope first, revealing money more than she had ever seen at once in her life, and a note. For the first time, the rest is on the account. Details are in the box. Sorry for hiding it. Love you. Your B. In the box was a bank card, a recorded PIN code, and a passbook with a large sum, and a small silver key with a tag reading an address, 47 Garden Street, her new home. Ellie left the bank, a changed woman, confident, shoulders straightened. For the first time in months, she felt not like a helpless old woman, but like a woman with a plan and the means to carry it out. The taxi driver, an elderly man with lush mustaches, looked interested at the address she gave. Garden Street? That's Sunny Valley? A country settlement, mostly empty now. People come in summer. I know, she lied. Just want to check how the house survived the winter. All the way, she looked out the window, watching the city give way to suburbs and then forest. A strange feeling mixed with anxiety and anticipation filled her soul. What awaited her in this mysterious house Bob had bought? Sunny Valley was a tidy village with wooden houses hidden behind tall fences. Now in February, most plots were deserted under snow caps, but here and there chimneys smoked. Some owners lived here year-round. Here is your house, number 47. The taxi driver stopped by sturdy gates of dark wood. Need help with bags? No, thank you. I have only one. Ellie paid, tipping generously. Could you come back for me in 3 hours? I need to return to the city then. Of course, here's my number, he said. Left alone at the gate, Ellie took the bigger key from the box, presumably for the gate. It fit perfectly. The gates opened with a slight squeak, and she stepped onto her new property. The house was not big, but solid and well-kept, a one-story home with an attic clad in wood, painted a pleasant green. The surrounding plot was about 15 acres, currently under snow, but probably very picturesque in summer. Ellie vividly imagined flowers and vegetables growing here, which she always loved to cultivate. Inside the house was simply but tastefully furnished. The furniture was not new but sturdy. In the living room were a sofa and armchair covered with slip covers, with paintings of landscapes on the walls, very much Bob's style. He loved nature. The kitchen was small but functional, with a stove and refrigerator. The bedroom had a wide bed and a wardrobe, even a TV, though an old one. It was clear no one had lived there for a long time. The air smelled of an uninhabited room, and a thin layer of dust covered the furniture. But everything was ready for the owner's arrival: bedding in the cupboards, dishes in the buffet, even canned goods and grains in the cupboards. On the living room table, Ellie found another envelope with her name on it. Inside was a note from Bob dated 2 years earlier. Ellie, if you're reading this, it means my worst fears were justified. I bought this house for both of us as a backup for old age. I wanted to surprise you on your birthday, but then realized it might be more important your refuge in case of trouble. The house is fully ready for living. Water, gas, and electricity are connected and paid for a year ahead. In the bedroom drawer, you will find a folder with documents and contacts. There's everything you need to know about the house and the plot. There is a contract with a security company, and with the neighbor on the left, his name is Michael Henderson, a good fellow, former military, who watches over the house in the owner's absence, shovels snow, checks the heating. Live here happily, dear, and don't worry about me. If you're reading this, it means I'm already where there's no pain or worries. And remember, I always loved you, even when I didn't say it. You're B. Ellie pressed the letter to her chest. Tears finally broke free, bitter and sweet at the same time. They washed away months of humiliation and fear. Bob, her Bob, had taken care of her even after his death, protected her from the nightmare her life had become. When the tears dried, Ellie felt an extraordinary clarity and determination. The plan formed instantly and completely in her mind. She knew what she had to do. Returning to the city with the same taxi driver, Ellie headed straight to the legal consultation office listed in the documents folder. There worked Thomas Wallace, Bob's acquaintance who helped him with the Sunny Valley house. Eleanor Vance, the elderly lawyer with attentive eyes, came to meet her. Bob said you might come, though I didn't really expect it. I didn't know myself, Ellie admitted. My husband kept it a secret. He loved you very much, the lawyer nodded, and was very worried about you, told me about your son. No offense. I know what he's become. Ellie could speak of it without pain. Now I need your help, Mr. Wallace. I want to annul the deed on my house. Is that possible? The lawyer pulled out a folder with her name from the desk drawer. Robert Vance anticipated this scenario. When you signed the deed, there was a special clause about the donee's obligation to provide you with decent living conditions for life. If this condition is violated, the gift can be disputed. It has been violated, Ellie said firmly. They evicted me to the basement, starved me, refused medical care. We'll need evidence. The lawyer made a note in his notebook. Photos of the living conditions, witness testimonies. I have a witness, my granddaughter, and I can show how I lived, and neighbors saw what happened. Excellent, nodded Mr. Wallace. Then let's get started. I will prepare the lawsuit. It's not a quick process, but our chances are very good. Ellie returned home to her new real house late in the evening. She stoked the stove, took a hot bath for the first time in a long while, changed into clean clothes she found in the cupboard, and lay down feeling an extraordinary peace. Somewhere out there in the city, Sarah was probably calling all her acquaintances, trying to find her. Maybe David had already come back from work and was making a scene upon discovering her disappearance. Perhaps they even contacted the police to search for a missing old woman with dementia. This thought made Ellie smile. Let them search, let them worry, let them feel even a bit of the fear and uncertainty I lived with these past months. And in a week I'll return with a lawyer, the police if necessary, and I'll take back what legally belongs to me. Falling asleep in the warm bed, Ellie thought of Bob. Strangely, she felt his presence especially strongly today, not as sad memory, but as a living, supportive warmth, as if he was right there, nodding approvingly. Right, Ellie, you're doing everything correctly. In the morning, Ellie was awoken by a knock on the door. A sturdy man about 65 years old in a camouflage jacket stood on the threshold. Michael Henderson. He introduced himself. Your neighbor. I saw smoke from the chimney and thought to check who arrived. Robert Vance warned that your wife might come. Eleanor Vance. Ellie extended her hand. Thank you for looking after the house. It was no trouble, smiled the neighbor. A good house, sturdy. Robert Vance chose with knowledge. You can tell an engineer. Are you okay? Need help? For now, I'm fine, Ellie smiled. But I will be glad if you help with groceries. I still don't know where to shop here. Of course, Michael nodded. My Linda was just about to go grocery shopping. She'll bring whatever you need for you, too. And come over in the evening for tea. You'll meet us. Seeing this elderly couple who had been together nearly 40 years and still kept the warmth in their relationship, Ellie, for the first time, thought, maybe it's not too late for me to find happiness. Not necessarily a new love, just peace, respect, human dignity. Maybe this new chapter of my life won't be worse than the previous. With this thought, she returned home and slept soundly without fear, nightmares, or the cold that haunted her in the basement. Ahead was a hard road, court confrontation with her son, inevitable gossip among neighbors and acquaintances. But Ellie was ready. Bob had given her not only a roof over her head, but also back her faith in herself. The following week passed in hustle and bustle. Thomas Wallace proved to be a true professional. He prepared the lawsuit, gathered necessary documents, and even arranged for an expert to inspect Ellie's living conditions in the basement. Eleanor Vance, we need witness testimonies, the lawyer said when they met in his office 3 days later. Your granddaughter, are you sure she'll agree? Chloe? Ellie hesitated. She's a kind girl, but only 15, and her parents may pressure her. We can arrange for a psychologist to be present during the interview, without the parents, perhaps at school. I don't know, don't want to involve her? We have other options. Neighbors, nodded the lawyer. I've already talked with 2 families on your street. They confirm they saw you being sent to the basement, treated badly. One neighbor even secretly brought you food against Sarah's orders. That was Brenda Jenkins, Ellie's age, the only one who dared to stand up to Sarah when she forbade neighbors from contacting Ellie, claiming she had a dangerous form of senile dementia. Will that be enough? It should, especially combined with photos and the expert's report. And if needed, we have one more trump card. Thomas Wallace smiled, but about that later. Ellie trusted him completely, just as she once trusted Bob. Life had taught her. There are men you can rely on. On the D-Day, exactly a week after Ellie's disappearance, she, Thomas Wally expert, and the precinct inspector arrived at her old house at 10 a.m. On a Saturday, when David was supposed to be home. Her heart pounded wildly as she pressed the familiar doorbell. Over that week, Ellie had changed. She had a haircut, bought new clothes, straightened her posture. The timid old lady was replaced by a confident woman. Still, inside her chest tightened at the thought of meeting her son. He opened the door. For a second, he looked at her, not recognizing, then surprise flashed in his eyes, quickly replaced by anger. Mom, where have you been? We've been exhausted searching for you. He tried to grab her hand, but Ellie stepped back. Hello, David. Her voice was calm, though she trembled inside. I have come to talk, and not alone. Only now did he notice the people standing behind her. His face changed, becoming wary. Who are they? What is happening? Thomas Wallace, Mrs. Vance's lawyer, introduced the attorney on, and this is Pavel Nikolaevich, housing conditions expert, and District Officer Sokolov. We want to inspect the place where Eleanor Vance lived the past months. I don't understand what you mean. David crossed his arms, blocking the way. Mom lived with us on the first floor, then disappeared. We even filed a police report. That's not true, Ellie said firmly. You know, I lived in the basement under inhuman conditions, and we will prove it. Mr. Vance, the officer interrupted. We have reason to believe there was a violation of the deed's conditions, namely, the obligation of the donee to provide decent living conditions. We are obliged to conduct an inspection. If you obstruct, we will record it as resistance. All right. David begrudgingly stepped aside. Come in, but don't disturb Sarah and the children. They're not involved. They entered the house, her house, every corner steeped in memories. Ellie tried not to look around, not to notice the changes Sarah made. It was too painful. The basement, she pointed to the door at the end of the hall. What basement? David feigned surprise. That's a storage room. Don't lie, son. Ellie shook her head. Don't worsen your position. The expert opened the door and went down, followed by the officer. After a few minutes, they returned grim-faced, lips pressed tight. There really is a living space, the officer said. Folding bed, portable toilet, personal belongings. That was temporary, David snapped. We're doing repairs. Mom had to stay there for a while. We plan to set it up. The basement has damp and mold on the walls. The expert shook his head. That room is unfit for human habitation, especially an elderly person with a weak immune system. Eleanor Vance, do you confirm you lived there? The officer asked. Yes, Ellie answered resolutely. 3 months since I signed the deed. At that moment, Sarah appeared on the stairs, moving carefully, holding the railing as if afraid to fall. Her face was white as chalk. What's going on here? She asked in a thin voice. David, your mother has returned. He gritted through his teeth. With a lawyer and police, says you abused her? What nonsense. Sarah tried to protest, but her voice trembled. We cared for her, and she cared for her. Ellie couldn't stand it. You starved me, locked me in the basement, threw out all my things, didn't give me medicine when I was sick. That's not true. Sarah shouted. She makes it up. She has senile dementia. The doctor will confirm. What doctor? Thomas Wallace asked quietly. Show medical evidence. Sarah fell silent, of course. They had no such documents. They just used that excuse to isolate Ellie from the outside world. We are not here to argue, the lawyer interrupted, but to record the violation of the deed's conditions and prepare a lawsuit to rescind it. The expert will inspect the basement, take photos, and prepare a report. Then we will leave. Rescind the deed? The house is ours by law. Only if you fulfill the deed's conditions, Thomas Wallace calmly replied, and you have grossly and inhumanely violated them. While the expert and officer inspected the basement, Ellie, David, and Sarah sat in the living room in tense silence. Ellie tried not to look at her son, afraid she would break down and cry. After all, he was her own flesh and blood, her child. How could he do this to her? Mom, finally said David, why all this circus? We're family. Family? Ellie smiled bitterly. Where was this peace when you sent me to the basement, threw out my things, forbade the grandchildren to see me? We just wanted everyone to be comfortable. Sarah chimed in. The house is big, but not endless. The kids need space. Don't lie, at least not now, Ellie said tiredly. You just wanted to get rid of me to sell the house. I know everything. David and Sarah exchanged glances, and from their faces, Ellie understood she hit the mark. Chloe hadn't lied. They really planned to sell the house. Who told you? David squinted. It doesn't matter. Ellie wasn't going to expose her granddaughter. What matters is that it's true. At that moment, the expert and officer returned. The expert held a tablet with photos of the basement and some papers. Everything is documented, he said. There's a report on the unlivability of the room. Damp, cold, lack of normal ventilation, unsanitary conditions. I'm ready to testify in court. Thank you, Thomas Wallace nodded. Now we can go, Eleanor Vance. Ellie stood, feeling a strange lightness, as if a burden that had weighed on her all these months finally lifted. Wait! David jumped up. You can't just leave like that. Mom, where will you live? You have nothing. I have a house, Ellie replied calmly, and means of subsistence you don't know about. What house? Sarah stepped forward. What nonsense! The house Bob bought for me. Ellie allowed herself a small smile. My late husband was wiser than you thought. He foresaw everything and prepared. David and Sarah's faces twisted with disbelief, reading the same question in their eyes. How is this possible? Dad bought a house? David asked incredulously, and you knew all this time? No, Ellie shook her head. I only found out a week ago when I found his letter. It had all the necessary documents. And what now? Sarah crossed her arms. Will you sue your own son? What a shame for the whole county. I shouldn't be ashamed, Ellie said firmly. But you should be, for how you treated an elderly woman who gave you everything she had. At that moment, Liam and Chloe appeared on the stairs. The children looked confused and scared, Grandma. Chloe ran to her, hugging tightly. You're back! She hugged her all over like in childhood. Ellie stroked her head, feeling her shoulders trembling. I thought you were dead, she whispered. They said you left for a friend's house, but I didn't believe it. Chloe, Sarah scolded her. Don't make things up. They did, Liam said quietly, looking down. You said Grandma left and probably froze somewhere on the street because she'd lost her mind. A heavy silence fell. Even the seasoned officer looked shocked. Kids, go to your rooms, David said. This is an adult conversation. No. Chloe straightened up. I'll stay. I saw everything, how you sent Grandma to the basement, how you brought her bad food, how you threw away her things. Chloe, Sarah panicked. Stop right now. No, Mom. The girl shook her head. I won't be silent anymore. What you did is terrible, and I'll tell everyone the truth. Ellie looked at her granddaughter with pride and pain. 15 years old, and already so strong and principled, just like Bob. They left the house accompanied by the lawyer, the expert, and the officer. Ellie's heart ached at the thought that she might be seeing her old home for the last time. So many memories, so much life remained in these walls. But ahead was a new chapter, and Ellie was ready to start it. On the way home to her new house in Sunny Valley, she was silent, gazing out the car window. Thomas Wallace, understanding, did not disturb her with conversation. Only when they neared the village did he say, You handled yourself well, Eleanor Vance. Many on your place would have lost it and thrown a tantrum. There's no point, Ellie shrugged. Yelling won't help. We need results, and we'll get them. The lawyer nodded confidently. After today, we practically have a 100% chance to win the case, especially with your granddaughter's testimony. Chloe turned out braver and stronger than I thought, Ellie said. At 15, she did what I wouldn't dare at her age. She stood up to her parents for justice. Can she testify without her parents' knowledge? Ellie asked. They'll surely forbid it. That's why we need to act fast and decisively. I can file a motion for a special hearing with a minor witness without her parents, and Child Protective Services will ensure her protection. Arriving home, Ellie first made peppermint tea. She needed to calm her nerves. The visit to the old house stirred too many emotions. She hadn't expected it to be so painful to see David cold, angry, nothing like the affectionate boy she raised. Something had broken in him over the years, or maybe it was always there. Just Ellie refused to notice. Bob had seen it. He was always more perceptive about people. The phone rang, new with big buttons. Ellie had recently bought. The number was unknown. Hello? Grandma, this is me, Chloe, came a muffled voice. I'm calling from a friend's phone so my parents won't know. Chloe. Ellie was overjoyed but also worried. Are you okay? Didn't they punish you for what you said? Everything's fine, she sighed. They yelled, of course. Mom called me a traitor, said I'll enter college by myself now without their help, and Dad won't even talk to me. Ellie's heart ached for the girl caught between two fires because of her with him. Maybe you should apologize to them, Ellie suggested gently. Say you overreacted. Don't ruin your relationship with your parents over me. No way. Chloe was indignant. I told the truth, and I won't apologize. They treated you terribly and now pretend nothing happened. Dad said so what? She lived in the basement a bit, not on the street, and now she wants to take the house. That was so like David lately, always finding excuses for himself, refusing responsibility. Grandma, can I come visit you? Chloe suddenly asked. Even for the weekend, I want to see how you live now. Of course, sweetheart, Ellie smiled, but how will you get here, and will your parents let you? I won't ask. The granddaughter snorted. I'll say I'm going to a friend's cottage to study. Just tell me the address and how to get there. Ellie gave the address and explained which bus to take. They agreed on the next Saturday. Holding the phone, Ellie smiled. For the first time in a long while, she had something to look forward to. The next few days passed, preparing for the trial. Thomas Wallace gathered all necessary documents, secured the support of witnesses, and prepared the complaint. Simultaneously, Ellie settled into the house. She bought new curtains, ordered food delivery, and even began planting a small garden on the plot, though spring was still far off. You're not in a hurry? Linda asked when she visited and saw Ellie gardening. There'll still be frosts. I know, Ellie smiled, but I can't do nothing. I've always done something my whole life, and now it's especially important to stay busy to keep bad thoughts away. Linda nodded understandingly and joined in. Together they planned future beds, discussing what and where to plant. Working with the earth always calmed Ellie from childhood, spent in her grandmother's village. On Friday before Chloe's arrival, Thomas Wallace called Eleanor Vance. I have news. His voice was anxious. David contacted me. He wants to meet and discuss a settlement. A settlement? Ellie was surprised. What does that mean? He wants to resolve the matter without trial, probably realizing he will lose and wants to minimize the damage. And what does he offer? Not specifics yet, but from what I gathered, it may involve voluntarily rescinding the deed and returning the house to you. Ellie was silent, digesting the information. Was David having second thoughts, or was it a trick to buy time? What do you think, Mr. Wallace? Is he sincere or scheming? Hard to say, sighed the lawyer, but meeting him is worthwhile. Worst case, we continue preparing for trial. On Saturday morning, Ellie prepared for Chloe's arrival. She baked her favorite apple pie, made borscht, set the living room table. She wanted the granddaughter's first visit to be memorable. Chloe arrived at noon, rosy from the frost, with a backpack. She gasped in delight seeing the house. Grandma, how beautiful. Is all this yours? Mine, Ellie hugged her, breathing in the scent of her hair. Come inside, take off your things. I brewed tea and baked your favorite pie. Chloe explored the whole house, peeking into every room, touching things, looking at photos. Is this Grandpa? She pointed at a young photo of Bob. You were so happy here. We were, Ellie nodded, married 38 years and never regretted meeting each other. Do you hold a grudge against him? Chloe suddenly asked. That he hid this house from you? Interesting question. Ellie thought, no, I'm not mad. He wanted the best, and as you see, he was right. If I had known about the house, I might have told your dad or Sarah, and then who knows what would have happened. Chloe nodded seriously, clearly imagining the situation. Do you miss the old house? She asked. When they sat for tea, I do. Ellie confessed honestly, I lived there so long, every corner holds memories, but now everything has changed. Your mother redid much, and the atmosphere is different. It's bad now. Chloe sighed. Mom and Dad argue a lot. Dad says it's Mom's fault. Mom says he's a weakling, and they think I don't hear because the walls are thin in the new apartment. Ellie sighed too. They'll manage, she said, not entirely convinced. They just need time. Probably, Chloe shrugged. Grandma, will you move here to our house now? I don't know, Ellie answered truthfully. I like Sunny Valley, quiet, calm, good neighbors, plus not all memories are unpleasant here. I get that, Chloe nodded. Can I come visit you there? Of course, sweetheart, whenever you want. Your room will always be waiting. They spent another hour in her room, talking about school, friends, and Chloe's architecture aspirations. Ellie remembered how, despite the years of distance, she regretted missing her granddaughters growing up. When Ellie went downstairs, the house was almost empty. Movers carried out the last boxes. Sarah checked cupboards and drawers to make sure nothing was left. David stood in the hallway holding a bunch of keys. Here, he handed them to Ellie. Everything needed. Ellie took the keys, and their fingers touched briefly. David shuddered as if shocked. Mom, he stammered. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, Ellie shook her head. Words won't help now. I understand, he lowered his eyes. Where'd his eyes? I just want you to know I never wanted things to turn out this way. I love you, truly. His voice trembled on the last words. Ellie looked at this broken man, not recognizing the cheerful boy who once brought her bouquets of wildflowers and promised he would buy her a palace when he grew up. I love you too, David, she said softly. You're my son, and that will never change. But now we need time. A lot of time. He nodded without looking up, then abruptly turned and left, slamming the door harder than necessary. Ellie was left alone in the empty house. She walked through the rooms, touching the walls, breathing in familiar smells. This was her life, happy, full of love and warmth. Here they raised their son, celebrated holidays, dreamed of the future. Here she was happy, but now everything had changed. The house held not only good memories but also bitter ones of betrayal, pain, and broken hopes. Could she live here again? Could she forget the cold, the humiliation, and the fear? Ellie stepped onto the porch. The truck had already left, and the yard was empty. Only Chloe stood by the gate, saying goodbye to the house. Let's go, Chloe, Sarah called from the car. We still have to unpack in the new place. I'm coming, Chloe responded but didn't move. Ellie approached her, hugged her shoulders. It will be okay, she promised. I know, Chloe replied, pressing close. You taught me, Grandma, that even when everything seems lost, we must fight, that truth always wins. Not always, dear, Ellie stroked her head, but often, especially if you fight for it. Chloe smiled, hugged Ellie tightly, and ran to the car. Ellie stood at the gate watching them leave. Her son, his wife, her granddaughter, a family that would never be the same. Returning home, Ellie went to the living room and sat in the only remaining armchair, old and worn, which Sarah apparently deemed unfit for their new apartment. Once it had been Bob's favorite chair. Well, Bob, she said, looking at the empty wall where his portrait once hung, justice has been done, the house is ours again, but I don't think I'll live here, at least not yet. It seemed she felt a light touch on her shoulder, as if he was there, approvingly tapping her peft. Nonsense, just exhaustion, stress, Ellie thought. She took her phone and called Thomas Wallace. Hello, Eleanor Vance, answered the lawyer. How are you? They moved out, Ellie said. Yes, just now. Mr. Wallace, I have another request. I need your help with another matter. I'm listening. I want to sell the city house, Ellie declared firmly, and buy something smaller but closer to Sunny Valley, maybe an apartment in the nearby town, so Chloe can visit more easily and I'll live in Sunny Valley in summer on fresh air. Great idea, approved the lawyer. I'll help with documents and search. After the call, Ellie walked around the house, closed the windows, turned off water and electricity, then locked the door without looking back. The past was behind. Ahead was a new life, not the one she dreamed of, but her own life where she made decisions, learned to value herself, and set boundaries, even with the closest people. Bob was right. Love for children should not turn into boundless self-sacrifice. And he was also right when he said it is never too late to start over.